The most dangerous job in the NFL? Can Joe Brady survive year one, or will Buffalo eat him alive? All right, people, stop what you are doing right now. Because we are about to talk about the most pressure-cooked situation in all of professional football in 2026. Not the most talked about. Not the most hyped. The most genuinely nerve-shredding, stomach-dropping, sweat-producing situation in the entire National Football League. And it belongs to one man. A 36-year-old offensive genius who drinks too many Gatorade fast-twitch energy drinks, walks into work wearing shorts in sub-zero Buffalo wind chills, and just became the 21st head coach in the history of the Buffalo Bills. His name is Joe Brady, and depending on who you ask, he either landed the greatest job in the NFL or walked straight into a pressure cooker that could end his head coaching career before it ever really gets started. Welcome back, everybody. Today we are going deep on the Joe Brady question. The one that Bills Mafia is debating every single day in Discord channels and group chats and sports bars across Western New York. How much pressure is actually on this man? What does success look like in year one? And most uncomfortably of all, is there a world where Joe Brady is one and done as head coach of the Buffalo Bills? We are not going to hide from any of it today. We are going to cover every angle, every layer, every terrifying hypothetical. So strap in, because this one is going to get spicy. Let's start with the elephant in the room. The one that every national pundit has been pounding the table about since the day Joe Brady was announced as Sean McDermott's replacement. ESPN's Marcus Spears said it out loud, and he was not wrong. He said he is not sure if anybody walks into a head coaching job with more pressure than Joe Brady does in 2026. And Spears isn't alone in that assessment. FS's Chris Broussard put it even more bluntly. He said, look, Brady might call it year one, but it isn't year one. It is year 9. Josh Allen's 9th year. And every single season that this Bills franchise does not win a Super Bowl with Allen as their quarterback, the pressure ratchets up even higher. Nobody cares if they go 17-0. Nobody cares if Josh wins another MVP. If they end their season in a divisional round loss or a wildcard exit, it is going to be a massive, franchise-shaking disappointment. Now let that sink in for a second. Sean McDermott, a man with a 98-50 career record, a man who built one of the most consistent winning programs in the AFC over nearly a decade, got fired after going 12-5. 12 wins and a playoff appearance was not enough. That is the standard Terry Pegula has set. That is the bar that now hangs over Joe Brady's head like a sword on a very thin string. So how did we get here? Because to understand the pressure on Brady, you have to understand the situation he inherited and the decision that created it. The Bills fired McDermott after they fell to the Denver Broncos in the divisional round of the playoffs, despite a season in which they won 12 games and Josh Allen was arguably having one of the best years of his career. And crucially, they did it in a year where the Kansas City Chiefs, the dynasty that has haunted this franchise's Super Bowl dreams, missed the playoffs. The Baltimore Ravens missed the playoffs. The road was as open as it has ever been. And the Bills still could not get through. That was the final straw. The regime changed. And instead of going out and making a blockbuster splash hire, a big name, an established head coach, someone with a proven track record of getting teams to championship games, the Bills went in-house. They promoted their offensive coordinator, a man who has never been a head coach at any level in his entire 13-year coaching career, a man who, just weeks before being promoted, was interviewing for offensive coordinator jobs at other teams. That decision drew a lot of raised eyebrows nationally. It drew petitions. Honestly, there were reportedly ice sculptures made in protest. Buffalo doesn't do anything halfway when it comes to their feelings about this football team. But here's where the Joe Brady story gets genuinely fascinating. Because the more you dig into it, the more you realize this hire is far more calculated and far more interesting than it appears on the surface. Let's talk about who Brady actually is and why Brandon Beane and the Bills organization went to bat for him so hard. Brady came up through the coaching ranks the hard way, starting as a graduate assistant at Penn State, then grinding his way into the NFL under Sean Payton in New Orleans, sleeping at the office, loving every second of it, as he put it himself. He paid his dues in the building. He learned his craft under one of the most offensively creative minds in NFL history. And then in 2020, as offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, he did something remarkable. He orchestrated the first offense in Panthers franchise history, with 4 different players each surpassing 1,000 scrimmage yards. One of those players was a young wide receiver named DJ Moore, a man who has since been traded to the Bills specifically because Brady knows exactly what he can do. That is not a coincidence. That is a chess master making moves. Brady joined the Bills organization in 2022, took over play calling duties mid-season in 2023, and what happened next was striking. Since Brady took over the Bills' offense, Buffalo has ranked first in expected points added per play in the entire league and second in points per game. The offense averaged 29, 6 points per game, and 367 total yards per game. This is not a coordinator who got handed a great situation and coasted. This is a man who made the situation better. And there is one more piece of the puzzle that explains everything about how this hire went down, and it is the piece that makes all the difference. When the Bills conducted their head coaching search, Josh Allen was in the room, not metaphorically, physically in the room. Allen sat at that table for every interview, part of a panel that also included owner Terry Pegula, general manager Brandon Beane, and several other key members of the organization. And the message that arrangement sent to every candidate was crystal clear. This is Josh Allen's team. Allen is the center of this universe, and if you cannot sell Josh Allen on why you are the right person to lead this organization, you do not have the job. Joe Brady sold him. Because of course he did. Brady and Allen have spent 4 years together building something special. Allen's own players describe Brady in glowing terms. Left tackle Dion Dawkins said that Brady's players smile when his name comes up, that they want to play for him, that he makes them feel confident and puts them in the right position to win. That is not coach speak. That is genuine affection and respect from the locker room. And in an era where player buy-in is everything, that matters enormously. Brady himself was unambiguous at his introductory press conference. He said he did not take this job to shy away from expectations. He said he sure as hell did not do that. He said he is embracing the expectations, understanding them, meeting them full on. He knows what he signed up for. And then he said something that genuinely resonated. He said Buffalo is not just where he worked. It is where his life changed. And there is nowhere else he would rather be than right here, right now. That is not a man running from pressure. That is a man running toward it. But here's the thing about good intentions and compelling press conference quotes. They do not win football games. And the opening schedule that the Bills are staring down in 2026 is genuinely brutal enough to test any head coach, rookie or veteran. The Bills open on the road in Houston, then come home to host the Detroit Lions, then the Chargers, then the Patriots, then head out to Los Angeles to face the Rams. Let's count those together. That is 5 teams in the first 5 weeks, and every single one of those franchises except the Patriots made the playoffs last season. The Lions were the #1 seed in the AFC the year before that. This is not a schedule that eases a new head coach into the job. This is the NFL throwing you into the deep end on day 1 and asking you to swim like a champion. Now, to be fair, and this is an important point, as the analysts around the Bills have noted, that schedule would have been brutal for Sean McDermott too. This isn't a schedule that got harder because it's Joe Brady's name on the sideline. The Lions, the Rams, the Chargers, those are tough games regardless. But what makes it specifically interesting for Brady is the defensive transition happening simultaneously. McDermott didn't just leave behind a coaching staff. He was the defensive philosophy. He was the system. And now the Bills are completely overhauling that side of the ball under new defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard, bringing in a more aggressive, attack-minded defensive scheme along with several new personnel pieces to run it. And that is where the real anxiety lives for Bills Mafia, if we are being completely honest. Because here is the tricky thing about running an attack-style defense. It is thrilling when it works, and absolutely terrifying when it doesn't. McDermott's defenses were not always flashy. They didn't always generate the big, explosive turnover plays that get Twitter going crazy. But they were consistent. They were disciplined. And they almost never gave up the kind of catastrophic, back-breaking big plays that can flip a game in one snap. McDermott's teams were always in games. They very rarely got boat raced. If they were going to give up a score, it was usually going to come in the form of a long, methodical 14 play drive, not a 70-yard bomb that silences an entire stadium. The Leonhard defense, by contrast, is designed to be more aggressive, more disruptive, more willing to take calculated risks in pursuit of turnovers and tackles behind the line of scrimmage. And the trade-off with that style is real. When you play faster and more aggressively, you also create vulnerabilities. You can give up big plays. A corner who is pressed up in man coverage and gets beaten clean leads to a 60-yard touchdown. That is just the nature of the beast. Bills Mafia has to be prepared for that psychological adjustment. The Jim Leonhard defense may create more highlight moments, but it might also create more heart attack moments. The expectations from the fan base themselves are illuminating when you look at what Bills supporters have been saying. One fan summarized it simply by saying he expects a Super Bowl appearance. Full stop. Because part of the reasoning for the regime change was the lack of one. Another fan put the pressure level at a 7 out of 10, high expectations, but not quite fire him if he doesn't win it all territory yet. And perhaps the most insightful take came from a fan named Fred, who said he doesn't think it's Super Bowl or bust, but they have to at least look the part. Brady has to look like he belongs in the job. That framing is exactly right. At the end of 2026, Bills Mafia needs to believe that the Bills' status as a legitimate Super Bowl contender remains intact, and that Joe Brady's presence is an asset to that pursuit rather than a liability. One fan brought up the Knicks comparison, which is painful but not inaccurate, pointing out that if Bean isn't going to fire himself, then the pressure of any roster shortcomings falls disproportionately on Brady to maximize whatever hand he's been dealt. And that is a fair point. Bean and Brady made notable moves in the offseason, trading for DJ Moore and signing edge rusher Bradley Chubb to address two critical needs. Bleacher Report's Gary Davenport has laid out a realistic expectation of 12 wins and a legitimate title contender. But the Super Bowl question is the only one that ultimately matters in Buffalo. 12 wins and a first-round exit is not going to cut it. Not anymore. So what are Brady's actual advantages here? Let's give the man his flowers, because there are real reasons to believe in this situation. First, the offensive continuity is genuinely significant. In a league where defenses are always supposed to be ahead of offenses early in the season, the Bills' offense essentially has a head start because nothing changes on that side of the ball. Josh Allen has the same quarterback, the same foundational scheme, a new weapon in DJ Moore, who Brady coached to a massive season in Carolina, plus Keon Coleman entering what should be a more mature second full season, 3 elite tight ends to deploy in creative formations, and a running game built around James Cook that ranked among the best in football last year. If the offense hits the ground running, which it absolutely should, that buys the defense precious time to find its identity and start playing fast. Second, the continuity within the building matters more than people are giving it credit for. Brady didn't parachute in from somewhere else. He was not a stranger asking players to trust him on day one. He has been in that locker room since 2022. He knows these people as human beings, not just as players. He knows Josh Allen's tendencies on Tuesday mornings before a Wednesday walkthrough. He knows what motivates Deion Dawkins and what Keon Coleman needs to hear before a big game. That familiarity cannot be replicated from the outside, and it is a legitimate competitive advantage. Third, And this one is worth thinking about carefully. Brady's coaching philosophy is shaping up to be a genuinely compelling blend of two great minds. His offensive football philosophy is pure Sean Payton, aggressive, creative, scheme over personnel. The kind of offense that can make an average wide receiver look like a star and a star look like a generational talent. But his leadership philosophy, the way he intends to manage human beings and build a culture, appears to carry the heavy influence of Sean McDermott. That coaching of the whole man. That focus on relationships, on mentoring, on building something that extends beyond the X's and O's. You get Sean Payton's football with Sean McDermott's human touch? That sounds less like a first-time head coach and more like someone who spent 4 years quietly assembling the best possible version of himself for exactly this moment. And then there is the context of Brady's decision-making that says everything about his character and his confidence.